Hello and welcome to another episode of Musings. My name is Amrita Ghosh, and we have today a very unique episode called Turning Dreams into Music. I have a very special guest, Esmeralda Conde Ruiz, who is a multi-award-winning composer, conductor, and interdisciplinary artist. Esmeralda specializes in vocal work and interdisciplinary projects. She's worked with choirs from Ecuador to New York, Syria, and Sydney, only to name a few. She collaborates with contemporary artists, theaters, art institutions, and film directors to create mesmerizing choral sound landscapes all over the world. She writes, composes, records, performs, conducts, produces, and consults. And one of her latest awards is the Best Original Score at Los Angeles Independent Film Festival. Thank you for joining us today, Esmeralda.
Thanks so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure.
So I want to tell the audience a fantastic story here. And those of you who don't know yet, Esmeralda has collected this massive number of dreams in the past 1.5 years since the pandemic began. So these dreams are specifically dreams people had during the last pandemic 1.5 years. And then you turn these dreams into music, sung in different languages worldwide. Tell us about this incredible project. Where did you get this idea from? And related to that, why dreams?
So the idea did not just spring to mind. It was sort of a connection of many things that suddenly happened. For this piece, Cabin Fever, it was definitely many factors like being indoors for a very, very long time here in England. Then also not being able to work, sort of to stop your entire life and stop traveling, stop rehearsing, that big silence. Suddenly the awareness of different sonic surroundings, let's say, that was really, in a way, inspiring. I suddenly heard, the washing machine louder, the fridge noise louder. Anything that surrounded you was suddenly very dominant. Background noises got really, in a bad way, I guess, way too loud. And the other factor that came in was that I'm very lucky that I work in many different industries. So the only one that kept going was film. And I was lucky that a film composer I was working with, he said, Esmeralda, I do need a choir. It doesn't matter where they are, but I do need a choir. And it was March 2020. And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? And what inspired that production, though, was that I had to find someone regardless where. With a certain language, though. It was a request of an Arabic singer and an Arabic choir. And bizarrely, obviously everyone was shut down in Dubai and everywhere I was calling, and there were no studios that could open up. I did find someone in Sydney. And that made it a very interesting sort of thought process for me, because suddenly I had Sydney time zone very much in my head. Always, oh no, they're going to bed, I have to email them. Dubai and UK time zones were really much going on. And I, for other industries, like an international architect, that's very normal. You do know very much where your clients and your materials lie around and how to get them. For us in music, we don't usually work necessarily in these dimensions. We might have an agent somewhere else in these things, but not really a production over that many time zones. So that inspired a lot in me to just get an understanding. Okay, so there's always obviously someone sleeping when we're awake. It's very normal. But that awareness got really, really loud suddenly. Very, very loud. More than the production wasn't that long. But afterwards, it really stayed with me. And why dreams, to answer your second question, is, my usual work. In the past years, I was really interested to work amplifying voices. That was sort of my research, my creative outlet. I have a project where I interview grandmothers all over the world, and they put their words into music and amplify it by a female choir, a big choir. And that followed on with other projects where I was interested in internal voices, something like your to-do list that you tell yourself, or sadder places, something like schizophrenia, where you hear voices. How does that sound like? So I have a piece where I recreate that with an audience. So I was really interested in sort of these voices that you don't really listen to or want to amplify. But then in the pandemic, I realized, hang on a minute, the world is amplifying dreams, you know, like suddenly I was seeing dreams everywhere. People, A, remembered them in detail, and B, posted them online everywhere in all sorts of languages. And that was fascinating to me, because this time I wasn't the one amplifying them. The world was doing it, and immediately got my attention. And I couldn't stop reading them. I did find them so fascinating. And I think that combination of all of these strange things happening, just suddenly, the puzzle suddenly became one piece, which is Cabin Fever.
I want to back up on that because there's another story, how you and I met through this, the dreams. And so, as you mentioned, people started talking about dreams, and, you know, we have been having very vivid dreams, most of us. So I happened to tweet a very vivid dream that I had during the early months of the pandemic about food running out in the house. That caught Esmeralda's attention. And then she and I talked, and she turned this particular dream, couple of lines, into this fantastic haunting piece of music. And I wish I could play it for the viewers, but it's there. And we'll talk about where to find it. But that's how you and I connected. And I am so incredibly honored to be a part of this historical artifact that you've created. But I want to stay on this focus on dreams itself. And, you know, as I mentioned, we all have been having dreams, but something has also changed, because the dreams are vivid. They are sometimes anxiety ridden. They are nightmares. They are eerie. And when I listened to this incredible project of yours, it also had this very calming quality, like a lullaby. Some of the very anxious lines also I felt were soothing. What does this particular piece of music, Cabin Fever, that you've titled, aim to do in this collection of pandemic dreams, which is haunting in a way, but also soothing in some really contradictory ways?
Thank you for describing my music so beautifully. First of all, to find words to answer your question is hard, because I'm still in the middle of writing the piece. So you need to imagine I've been reading thousands of dreams, over thousands and thousands, really, since months. And I've been really lucky. We reached out to researchers all over the world who research dreams, and they were very generous and gave us access to their databases and their current findings, and talked me through what their thinking is. And so I suddenly found myself just reading a lot of dreams, and it's fascinating. The humans are fascinating, not only because what they dream, but also how they express what they dreamt. So some people wrote 7 pages long in every detail, you know, like it's incredible. Some others just wrote 1 word or 3. So there is this very distinguished way of how describing a dream. And then there's so many topics as well. So many people dream similar things, bizarrely. And I think that's why I also jumped on dreams, there's a certain, after a while of reading dreams, you feel connected to whoever dreamt that. You can identify, you laugh and say, oh yeah, I had a dream like that. Or yeah, I can totally follow that. And there's this incredible human connection through reading through dreams. And also that incredible sort of respect might not be the right word, but admiration that someone opens up and shares something so intimate. And I think if it wouldn't be a pandemic, people wouldn't be doing it probably. But there's something so vulnerable about sort of sharing a dream and then publicly giving it to a database to researchers, and there's something that I honor deeply. So I had enormous respect from these givings, let's say. And I felt really sort of, that I have to do these dreams justice. What someone has given you something that vulnerable and so personal, you need to do something honorable with it, but also you need to make it sonically, work for my sonic world. And it's quite interesting because when you start singing dreams, they can sound incredibly naff. They can sound, they sound very musical, in a very musical way. I opened the door and so there's certain things that you need to really stay away from musically to make them sound what's the right word? Not narrative. That was my intention. I did not want to narrate what you're hearing. I did not want to go sad when the dream is sad. I didn't, I did want to have a second layer. I wanted to hear the dream, but I wanted to give the listener the space to decide where to go with it emotionally. So you can, if you're a bit sad on that day, it might push you a little bit more into a different direction when you're hearing it. If you're happy, it might make you feel happy. So sort of, I wanted to have a lot of space for emotions, and I wanted to not tell the audience this is how you're meant to feel when you're listening to it. And I like that you picked up on the feel of lullaby, because there is this quality of singing. The singers, and how I've written it, is mainly a cappella. So it is, they're singing just with their voices and the virtual space, because that makes sounds too. And so that's a whole different sonic world. And I really wanted to discover that. And there is technically speaking, there's certain things that do not work. Usually singers can sing very low or very high, for instance. You write it on your score and they can sing it. Online with open microphones, that does not really work. The softwares, Zoom or any other softwares, if you start singing, they do not like these frequencies for whatever reason. They've been programmed to not like them, and they do noises and sounds. So there are some technical restrictions that I had to follow musically as well, where to go with the melodies. But mainly, really, it was, for me, the dreams that I find fascinating is also the state of in between, that you're, that moment when you're half awake but half asleep. It's a dream, but you also know it's actually not. You're a bit confused, sort of that in between moment, or the moment just before you actually deeply fall asleep, sort of that. I find music can often describe worlds like that, or words that cannot express so much. Music can do that. And that's the space I wanted to be. I wanted to be somewhere where it's not really clear where we are. And I felt the internet, the sonic space worked perfectly for that. And the melodies I'm writing are usually quite soothing, and usually my audiences tell me that they have an emotional connection to it, even though they often don't think about it in that way. But I think in an ideal world, if people would feel it's a digital lullaby or something like in that world, that would be beautiful, because what we experienced is that when we test run it once, our audiences would go to bed with the music on and then wake up and listen again. So it's this sort of piece you but is not like a like a record that you're playing. It's something very soothing, calming, and sort of quiet. Yeah, it's a bit like the dreams, something very gentle, not loud. Yeah.
I also really like the fact that you talked about the whole piece as an in-between space in this sonic world. And with that, the music was expressing this in-betweenness. But it is also, for those who don't know yet, you've done it in many, many different languages. All these dreams are sung in different languages by different singers. And also the fact that you yourself have sung a little bit in Hindi with me, which is the most incredible session I had with you. Why did you choose to translate many of the dreams in different languages? And in some cases, these short little segments also came with, as you mentioned, the household sounds, the vacuum cleaners, or other regular sounds around the house that breaks the silence these days more than ever. So the languages and the sounds, what made you incorporate both?
To do a truly global piece, you cannot just do it in English. It just doesn't work for me. It needs to be inclusive, and you're only inclusive if you invite languages in that you do not speak. And you need to, we're music in that respect that is performed by choirs often is very white male dominated, and for me this piece it's not about that, it's really about humans. And if you want to represent humanity, it needs to be international. It needs to be sung in all languages that we can be able to invite and that want to participate, really. From the beginning, I always knew that was important, especially because at the very beginning, when I was reading dreams just online, they were in all languages. They were not just in English. They were in all sorts of languages. So that was really, really important. And I do believe every language comes with a different sonic quality. Specific languages sound different. Not only words linguistically, but sonically, so beautiful. And that's key to this piece, really. And yeah, as you described so nicely, when I was writing the first bits, I had to obviously sing it myself to see if it works. And it's quite a challenge to suddenly have to sing in Swahili or Finnish or Hindi, as you said, if you don't speak that language. But it's such a beautiful, humbling experience just to listen and to understand someone else's reality. It's someone else's world sounds like that. And there's so much beauty in these languages that I really wanted to include them. There was no way around it. And the domestic sounds, yeah. There is something about it, we're so surrounding ourselves with music so much all the time that we often just don't listen anymore, really. Like the notion of listening was so beautiful. I have an ensemble that only meets online. Most of them have never met in real life. They work only online, and we sort of discover the online sonic space together with my pieces. And they they really started to get to learn sonically with my exercises about their homes. What does make you feel at home? Which sound is that? And then they go out and start listening and record sounds and bring them back the next week. And it's the art of listening is nothing new. There's wonderful artists who push that as well, but it's been an integral part for me to involve that into this piece, because as I said at the beginning there, I think sonically for everyone the world changed so much that the only way of expressing that was by showing the absence. I wanted to integrate the absence of music, how we are used to it. And we had lots of fun too. It sounds more tragic than it is. We had my ensemble, one of the singers has a smoothie machine, for instance, and she put it on live on Zoom. She lives in Seattle, and the other singers were all over the UK, in Spain and Germany and other places. And I asked them to sing along with the smoothie machine live. So that's quite an experience to hear that, and to get a sense for all these worlds, mainly, because everyone did hear something else at home, and everyone's home is different as well. And so that was for me really important to involve these sounds. And I'm really excited in the future when we're doing the final piece to hear all these languages and sounds from other homes. How does a home sound like somewhere else? That's really the piece, what it's about.
I want to move to another part of this piece, which is the direction itself. Directing this music must have been a real mammoth task itself. What were your inspirations, or how did you go about the process? Did you do any research in the different languages that you had to fit? As you said, that every language you feel has a separate sonic quality. So what was the process like in all of this?
Yeah, it's a complicated project. There's so many levels, and musically, production wise, it's for me, this piece, I see it a bit like a sculpture more than just music, because there's so many layers to it. And my material are really humans, and I built the sculpture with their languages, their voices, and their sort of sonic worlds. And the difficulty is to get humans to join or to do it. You need to show them how it's done or how they can build it for you. And even though you can describe it by words, often, if you speak to a conductor, they will ask, can I see the score? Or can I, so it is a very different language that you need to provide for these participants. And, but if you then work globally, you come into very different areas. For example, I worked with a choir of Filipino singers, and they didn't ask for a score, they didn't ask for anything. They jumped on that repetitive singing. That was the most natural thing for them, and I had to stop them and say, like, wait, have you done this before in that way? And they were like, oh, no, we are, from where we are from, this is like a very sort of it's very rooted in our culture. That's how we sing. And I couldn't believe it. So, there was some research that I did, but equally it is an artistic interpretation. I did not go out and say, oh, I want to write a Japanese song. Let's, use Japanese scales and how singers would sing there. No, it was more, for me, it was really important to understand the language sonically. So what I would ask participants was, can you please speak the dream, how it's written, translate it in your own words, how you would tell a friend, not how we have sent it to you. And then can you slowly speak it and record it so I can have a listen? And that was the inspiration. Not so much the whole culture, it was more the human again, the single human. And I would follow the coloration of the voice and the breaks people would do and how they would breathe. And then, it's I guess, production-wise, it's more from my side. It was a lot of listening when I got these recordings in. A lot of I'm trying to understand that language, trying to understand why do they go up, down there. What's the word? Googling, lots of that. It was really interesting. And then we had sessions where we would meet the performers and then go through my musical ideas and see, does that work for you? I would always put language before my composition. For me, it was really important that the language is accurate, and that it was really interesting. Some would say, I would actually go up, and they wouldn't even know why. There was an interesting conversation being like, like you said, in Hindi, we could actually leave this word out. Would that make any sense musically? So there were some really beautiful and interesting conversations for me. And then obviously production wise, it's a huge task. We have 3 producers working in different time zones all the time on this project. And just to get all these people involved was important for this stage, because if you want to build something that massive and that complicated, you need to have a certain, I call it prototype. You need to have something that you can show, look, this is what this is how it might look like. This is what we want to build. That's why I always envy the arts so much more, because you have something visual. You can see, you're like, here, this is what I'm building. And when you work in sound, it's very hard to show this is what it might look like or sound like. So that's what we're currently doing. We've built this prototype, and now it's much clearer for everyone where we're going, which direction. And it's to give you more insight about the production. It's incredible, because you might think we just called our friends and then got lots of languages in, but it's not. It's the opposite. It was really like we have divided the entire world into 24 zones or strands, or however you want to call them, and grouped time zones. There's more than 24 time zones, but we grouped them all. And then we tried to find one person for each time zone that we could work with to show one dream for every time zone for now. And that was the challenge. So there was a lot of phone calls, lots of emails, lots of to build this prototype for now, And we also, since last year, November, started speaking to choirs, ensembles, performers, speakers all over the world, really to understand, if you think again as sculpture, where can we source the material? Where can we get the singers? Who could be interested? And from the beginning, it was really important that we involve First Nation representatives to speak to them and to speak to all people of the world who want to be part of it. Really, it's really crucial. And these relationships take time, and it just takes time to have the right people on board and to find the right singers who want to experiment and try something new. So it's a long process, but we're so happy with the outcome so far. The prototype was a magical experience, and we're now moving into the next phase where you're starting to build the thing. Yeah.
Sounds like a much bigger and colossal project than I had in mind. So that's absolutely fascinating. I want to talk to you about the title itself, Cabin Fever. And it is obviously very apropos to the times we are in the pandemic. But how did you come up with the title? And would you also share some distinct or specific incidents or memories while you recorded or gathered people from all across the world that you remember of?
The title, yes, usually titles come to me. I find them there somewhere when I research the piece or when I research lyrics or something. I find something. For this one, as I wasn't aware that I was working on a piece at the beginning, because there was so many factors that brought it. A friend of mine, an artist, texted me, I think in April 2020, saying like, I hope you're right and don't have cabin fever yet. And I because I'm not a native speaker in English, so I Googled it and I was like, oh my God, this is like perfect. So I said, that's the title. That's what we're doing. So it came through a friend. And memorable experiences, I think all of them, to be honest. I cannot exclude one. Every single one was so different, you know. I know we're all used and probably fatigue of being online and Zoom meetings and all of that, but I feel still excited about the idea, and you know, that we can just open up a laptop and suddenly be in any country that we want without having left the house. That's incredible. And I hope we never get tired of it, because it's the most amazing way of connecting. And obviously that people, strangers, absolute strangers, let me into the house, you know, through this medium, and then did music with me. There's so many memories that I have of, you know, it was really intense. It was also daily, you know, in the morning, because of all the time zones, in the night. So I was writing for 6 weeks straight every day, because, you know, there's been a lot going on, and then getting the files ready so we can put the prototype together for people to see, to think about. So yeah, it was pretty intense, but in a way, I don't know, because I haven't traveled since the pandemic, and I'm very much used to traveling a lot for work. So it was quite kind of nice just to, you know, to have this opportunity to meet so many people. The sad thing for me now is like, I really want to go now and see all these places. It's made me travel sick in a good way, sort of. Yeah.
And I also gathered that there are some talks happening to turn this piece of art into a museum project or exhibiting at a museum. Tell us about some of the upcoming festivals, where the song would be featured, and where do you plan to have this as a museum exhibit?
Yeah, so the cabin fever has always been the idea that it's not just an audiovisual artwork. It's always meant to be exhibited. It was not just to be a score and performed, and that's it. Never. From the beginning, I felt, because it is created digitally, it is visual. Performers are covering their faces, you know, so it's with colors, with objects from home. It's very visual. So for me, the visual was always equal to the music. So there was never a distinguishing thing. And therefore, my producers come from both worlds. So I have one producer that is solely contemporary art producer. And the other producer is from the contemporary music world, who comes from publishing, from concert houses. And the third producer is from touring world and finances, how to run that. So it's these three worlds, really, really important that they are combined. And the future for this piece is, we had the wonderful opportunity to show Cabin Fever prototype, in 2 experimental festivals. One was in Canada recently at Folder Festival, and the next one is in Madrid at Cineteca Matadero. And these are great opportunities for us to show the prototype. And then in the future, we're hoping for next year to create the entire 24-hour piece live. So there'll be no recordings. Everything will be live with, that will go around the world for 24 hours, and everything will be filmed. And with that material, then we want to create in time the museum piece. So it's really 3 stages, and we're right at the beginning right now.
And as we wrap up this episode, could you share with us something that you learned from this entire experience, or how has this particular project transformed you?
I definitely learned how to calculate time zones better. I think that's one of the main takeaways, is that we're always so, when we program concerts or when we think of a performance, we always think our town, our city, our place. We never think our time zone, who's in our time zone. And the second you start opening that up, you see there's a lot more people, obviously, and more languages and more cultures. It's not just borders suddenly aren't so massive anymore. It's more time zones. We're all under the same sun. What do we have in common? And it's really sometimes very simple like that, but that really changed a lot in me in terms of reaching out, trying to find new collaborators, which is amazing. I've learned so much, and I wish I could say I want to learn more languages, but I don't think I'll ever do it justice. I'm very fortunate that I already speak 4, but I learned to really an admiration for other languages. I think there is this beauty in languages that should be featured much more in contemporary music and should be sung all over the world much more. There's so much beauty in singing in other languages. So yeah, I highly recommend it to anyone, especially, our experience was so beautiful. I'll never forget singing in Hindi. that is certainly something.
I had an amazing time singing with you in Hindi. And just to know about this project, 2 things I would always remember is how you really pulled together the whole globe during a pandemic in ways that I could not have imagined ever, through music, through different languages. And also, when every one of us, each one of us have been talking about Zoom fatigue or online fatigue, you really had a different rethinking of it. So I really appreciate that part also, beyond this absolutely incredible project. Thank you so much, Esmeralda.
Thanks so much for having me. It was lovely talking to you.